It's indeed a pleasure to be with you this evening. You know, we just finished this most special Yontiv of Hanukkah, where we dedicated ourselves to the Arshal Torah. And what better connection could there possibly be when it comes to the Arshal Torah for facilitating that through the Tinoke Shel Beis Rabban. And when it comes to Tinoke Shel Beis Rabban, here, for many of us who live in Baltimore, it's a very special place, and we've got very special mostos. But one of the jewels of the mostos in town happens to be Torah Institute of Baltimore. And as you hear tonight, it's going to be introducing a very, very important building campaign. But before we get into that, allow me to take back a few steps and understand that who would have thought 9-10 months ago we would ever fathom the concept of having to go around with masks and having to be placed in an isolated mode, not being able to have a situation where we can interact with people. And the bedrock of what gave us some level of at least regularity and regimentation with the schools. And Baruch Hashem, with tremendous siyata d'ishmaya, Torah Institute of Baltimore has been able to implement, with close coordination with the various health organizations, various protocols, to Baruch Hashem be able to stay open and to give some hope to be able to continue the important level of education that they instill to our children and grandchildren. But you know something, it's very interesting. What makes it unique? So there's an interesting Gemara in Sukkah and Daf Chav Ches that talks about the 80 Talmidim of Hillel. And who was it in particular that Hillel decided was going to be that special one to take over at the end? It was Katan Shebekula, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. One would think that when it comes to taking over, to be Malam Makom, the last thing you would want is Katan Shebekula. You would want the biggest Talmud Chacham. You would want, instead, those who were able to be the greatest sage. But in reality, what ended up happening is, as my Rosh Yeshiva Rav Gifta used to say, the aside of what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a communicator. He was able to understand the needs of the Talmidim. And as the Gemara said, he even opened the door for the Talmidim to come in and to greet them. And he did it in such a warm way. And he understood the needs. He understood the nurturing requirements and to be able to give it away in such a way that it was in essence what helped keep the whole concept of the Messiah alive. So too, Baruch Hashem, we have, as part of Torah Institute of Baltimore, a wonderful Menahel, Reb Shimon Hirsch, and his cadre of Rebbeim and Moros that are incredibly dedicated. They understand the needs of the Talmidim, and they're there to be able to continue that long heritage of the Messiah, of that which keeps us alive in these most difficult and challenging times. But it's not just unique in this context. In town, we have some very other special people, one of which has been recently transplanted to Baltimore, the Tzvi Mordechai Feldheim, the Rosh Yeshiva and 9th grade Rabbi of Yeshiva Keser Torah. And even though they have their own building campaign in place, he still felt it's important enough to be able to come share with us Divrei Bracha and understand the importance of this brand new initiative to be able to expand, to have the vision necessary to be able to help the yeshiva grow and meet its needs. And my bracha to the school, to the parent body, to the Hanhala, to the Rebbeim, and to the Moros, that Mirza Hashem, this should be a very successful endeavor. It should be L'Shem Shemayim, it should be L'Chavol L'Severis in Mirza Hashem, and which should help as we enhance the Limud Torah to meet the needs of each of the Talmidim to be able to help bring the Bias Goyal. Without further ado, Rabbi Feldheim.
Thank you very much. So there's a pasuk in Shir HaShirim that says, "Tzeno rena benois tzion b'melech shloimoi, v'atorah she'itra loi imoi, b'yoyim chasunosoi, b'yoyim simchas liboi." So the pasuk says, take a look at the special crown that Imoi, Klal Yisrael, made for the Melech Shloimeh. We know in Shir HaShirim, Melech Shloimeh refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the pasuk here refers to Klal Yisrael as Imoi. How do we understand that we can look at ourselves and say we are, so to say, Kaviyochel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mother? I once heard a hesber from Shimshon Pincus. He says, parents are always looking for nachas from their children. And there's many ways you get nachas. A child asks a kasha, a child is bevater to his younger brother, he gets a good report card. You want to drive around with a bumper sticker that says, my child is an honor student in Brisk. There's many ways you get nachas from your children. But there's one very special way. And I remember we were once going on a family trip. And you take the family on a trip, and when the Yiddish family goes on a trip, you take your freezer case, and there's 5,000 chopped up carrots in plastic bags. And you finally get to the place we're going to stop for lunch. And all of a sudden, my son takes out 2 folding chairs. He says to me, Abba, sit down. Mommy, sit down. We're going to serve lunch. That moment was a magical moment of nachas. When your parent, when your children decide to take over the role of being the mama. This is where we get the name mamala. When the child tries to play the role of the parent. When Klal Yisrael takes the role of the Rabbi Shalom and says, Rabbi Shalom, we're going to build a Beis HaMikdash. We're going to build a Mishkan. We're going to build a yeshiva. That's mama. We're speaking here tonight to individuals who want to take a responsibility to build, to perpetuate, to help a moisid grow. So we can say to everybody, even if I'm speaking only to tatis, but every one of you is a mama in a certain way, because you're trying to build what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to build. And the truth is, to a certain extent, this is a celebration. Why is it a celebration? There's a pasuk in Sefer Malachim. When the Beis HaMikdash was completed, the pasuk says, "Vayas chiroim es hakiyoros es hayoyim es hamizrokos vayachal chirom lasu his kol hamalocha asher lemelech shloime bebeis Hashem." The pasuk starts off Vayas chiroim with a vav. At the end of the pasuk is Vayachal chirom. Chirom completed his job. And when he completed his job, he's missing a vav. He was diminished. Because when he finished, he became less of a person. We are here celebrating on one hand the fact that a moisid that started by a few immigrants, by the penniless pennies, by the people who had no money, and built together a moisid called Sheres HaPleita. And today it has grown and burgeoned into a moisid that has hundreds of talmidim. We're bursting at the seams, but we're not finished. We're not diminished, but on the contrary, we're going to grow and build because there are more students, more significant issues that have to be dealt with, more responsibility, more achrayus, more opportunity, and more challenges. And so we're looking to grow and to build and to continue building. So if we're doing that, we're here to talk about chinuch. We're to talk about building and building a moisid of chinuch. What does chinuch mean? Rashi says, Vayorek is chanichav. Rashi says that chilos hachnos as odom oikedi le'onis shu oimed lamibo. Chinuch means the beginning of fashioning a keli or a person for a certain job. When you make a keli is made with heat. When you create talmidim, you create them with warmth. I know the Rebbeim. I'm only here for a few years, but I've met many of the Rebbeim in this moisid. I've met Rabbi Hirsch, Rabbi Reicher, many of the Rebbeim, from the youngest Talmidim to the oldest. And they are such special people. They're people who care, people with a warmth, people who are tzaddikim in their hanhaga, who are erlich, and they give over to children their depth and their warmth and their compassion. So we have the warmth to create these Talmidim. You know, there was a Maisa in a yeshiva. Amol yeshivas would give a stipend to Bochrim, especially when Bochrim would go home. So the Bochrim would go home and the Rosh Yeshiva gave him some money to pay for car fare, money for other things. There was a Bocher Shaya who refused to take any money. He was proud. He didn't want to take any money from the yeshiva. At the end of the Zman, he went to say goodbye to the Rosh Yeshiva and he didn't want to take the money. So Rosh Yeshiva said to him, Shaya, you're going to go home. And let me ask you, how are you going to treat your mother? Your mother might ask you to take care of your younger brother. She might ask you to bring out the garbage. She might ask you to set the table, to clean off the table. What are you going to say to her? You'll say, okay, Mom, I'll do you a favor. Okay, Mom, if you say so. Or are you going to say to her, Mama, I never have the chance in yeshiva to do kibbut over aim. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to fulfill this mitzvah. He says, that's what you're going to say, Shaya. You know why? Because a mother is a giver. She doesn't want to be a taker. A mama is a giver. Then he says, Shaya, the yeshiva is also a mama. With that, he gave him the money, and Shaya took it. This moisid is a mama. It's a place that gives to each Talmud. You can see the Talmidim that come out of Sheres HaPleita of Torah Institute have a special chashivas, special cheshik to learn, a special desire to grow, a special she'ifa for godless. And that is given to them by the environment of this Kavaldik and Moisid. But L'maisa, we just finished the Yontiv of Chanukah. And we went from Zois Chanukah to Parshas Bahaloischa and the Menorah. And the Pasuk says, Miksha te ose es ha-menorah, adirecha at pircha mikshahi. I think this speaks to what we're discussing tonight. Why does the Menorah have to be Miksha? Miksha means sculptured of one solid piece of gold. If I had to make the Menorah, I would make a shaft, then I would take gold and solder it on, and I'd put each arm on, and then I'd have a Menorah. Why does it have to be sculptured out of one solid block of gold? I think perhaps the message is that everybody can become a Menorah. Everybody can radiate the Oyer HaTorah to the whole world. And sometimes somebody would say, you know, if I had his brains, I'd be a Menorah. If I had his Sitzfleisch, I could sit and learn and be a Menorah. If I had his ability to articulate myself, I could be a Menorah. If I had his compassion, sensitivity, understanding, perception, then maybe I could be a Menorah. But me, what can I become? So the Torah says, Miksha Teoses HaMenorah. Everybody has within themselves the ability to become that menorah. Everybody can become an oyer that radiates the oyer Torah to the rest of the world. Just bang it out. It's all there. We have to realize that every single Jewish child can become a menorah that will radiate the oyer Torah to the rest of the world. We have to give them the ability, the wherewithal, and the assistance to help them carve themselves and bring out that beautiful block of gold that will help them become and help them shape themselves into that beautiful menorah that will radiate the Oyer Torah. So in that vein, we're trying to create a learning center, a special therapy center, a place where every single child can grow, can be taught, can be given the Torah and whatever they need to be able to inculcate the values, the knowledge, the chachma of Torah to every single Jewish heart. So somebody might say to me, wait a second. You want to talk to me about finishing Parshiyos and Chumash. You want to talk about Mora, Rashi, Tosfos, Rishonim, Achroinim. I hear you. But what about a learning center, a therapy center? What's that all about? The emes is, when the Mishkan was built, Moshe Rabbeinu told B'Tzalel, we need Kalim, we need Menorahs, we need Orna Kodesh, we need a Shulchan, we need a Mizbeach. And B'Tzalel said, where are you going to put them? And Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're right. You're right. And Moshe says to B'Tzalel, B'Tseil Keil Hayisa, you understood what Hashem wants because you were B'Tseil Keil. Zokta tells the Rosh Yeshiva, sometimes we think that when we dabble in things that may seem to be trivial, in things that perhaps don't appear to be the Oren HaKodesh Alein, but the things that make it happen, the things that are the important places and particulars of a Moisid HaTorah, the things that make it work, that make it run, that make kids steig, those are just as important. And when you're involved in that, when you're building those facilities and you care about it, so you are B'Tseil Keil. You are living in the shadow of the Rabbeinu Shalom. You are living with the realization and the understanding that you care. And when you really, really care, you'll understand what has to be done, what has to be invested in, what has to grow, and that's where you'll make your investment. Then we want to make an indoor playground for children. And again, you'll say, an indoor playground? It's interesting. By Maimon Har Sinai, the pasuk says, Moshe Yedaber for Eloi Kim Yanenu B'Koil. Right before Moshe gives the Aseres HaDibros, the pasuk right before says, Moshe Yedaber, Moshe is speaking, Eloi Kim Yanenu B'Koil, HaKadosh Baruch Hu amplified Moshe's voice. Somebody might think that that's the only pshat. There's a Gemara in Erchin. The Gemara in Erchin says, Moshe Yedaber, Moshe was about to speak. Elokim and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yanenu B'Koil, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Moshe, B'Koil, don't forget, the Leviim have to sing in the Beis HaMikdash. So you would think, of all things, at this magical moment, why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling Moshe about singing in the Beis HaMikdash? We're talking about the Chasna. This is the chuppah of Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Imagine you're walking your daughter down to the chuppah and you turn to your wife and you say, Gertrude, did we pay the public service bill this month? She'll look at me like crazy. That's what you're worried about? Kaviyachal, what's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's worried about singing in the Beis Hamikdash? I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, Herzu, you're about to give the first shir. You're about to teach Torah Zolz Wissen. In Yiddishkeit, there's an Indian of singing, there's an Indian of song, of joy, of happiness. You have to create, when you teach Torah, an environment of joy, happiness, where children can come and learn Torah, but still feel joy, feel happy, go home with a smile on their face and say, I love going to yeshiva. I love going because I love my Rabbi. I love my teacher. And I love playing there also. We create an ambiance where there's a sense of joy, a sense of happiness, a sense of simcha. So this is what we're trying to build. Take a moisid that has created hundreds of talmidim, that has had atzlocha from the early days when Rav Sternhill Zeichet Tzadik Levracha invested his koiches. Today it's a moisid of hundreds and hundreds of talmidim who are steiging and growing and going on to be gedolei Torah. But we're not finished. You have to keep building, keep growing, keep recognizing and adapting to the challenges that every single day brings us. To look at the needs of every child, have every child grow, every child steig, every child become the menorah that he can become. So we're asking you to make an investment. This is the parsha of investments. Yosef Hatzadik teaches us that in the 7 years of plenty, chaparayim, because there are going to become years where you won't be able to chaparayim. There are going to be years of famine, years when you leave this world that you won't be able to chaparayim. Now is the chance to chaparayim those opportunities to make investments in the future of Klal Yisrael. I want to tell you 2 stories. One story I may have said before in many locations, so some of you may have heard it, but I think it's kedai. There was a Yid who came to Rav Unger in Eretz Yisrael with a shaila. He said, I have a shaila to ask. And he tells him the story. He says, I was in concentration camp. After my family was deported, they lived in Hungary. They took my wife, my children, they killed out my whole family. I ended up in the barracks, depressed, zerbrochen, zeklapt. I lost everything. And the fellow lying next to me was a Hasidic younger man. And he helped bring back my emunah. He gave me back my bitachon. He gave me back my yiras shamayim. He gave me back my avos Hashem. Then one day he says, it's almost Pesach. What are we going to do? I said, what do you mean? He says, I got to have matzah for Pesach. I thought he was Meshiga. Matzah here, but he was determined. It got me excited. So I found out that there was a place where the Nazis had a bag of wheat. So one day we managed to steal some wheat. And slowly but surely we ground up the wheat and we had enough flour to bake 2 kezesim of matzah. And one day we baked 2 kezesim of matzah. We came back to the barracks and my Hasidic friend was trying to hide it under his uniform, and the Nazi figured that he had something to hide. He made him lift up his arms and the matzah fell on the floor and he stepped on it with his boots. I dived on the floor, I picked up whatever I could. We both got beaten up and we ended up in the barracks, a shmetter. But I opened up my hand and I had a kezayis of matzah. My friend said, let me have it. You have to let me have it. By the Seder, I never missed the kezayis of matzah in my life. Please let me have the matzah. I said, what do you mean? I'm the one who picked it up off the floor. He said, well, it was my idea to bake the matzah. I said, well, I found the wheat and we had a whole machlekes who's going to eat the matzah. And finally, we made an agreement. He would eat the matzah and I would get the schar for the mitzvah. So we had a Seder. He knew the Haggadah by heart. He ate the matzah. We didn't need more. But we had a Seder. And he ate the matzah. And I'm going to get the schar. The next morning he went out to work and he was so uplifted that he started to say Hallel, and he said a little bit too loud, and a Nazi shot him and killed him on the spot. So what's my shaila? My shaila is he just came to me in a dream. And he asked me if he could have the schar for that mitzvah. And I said to him, chutzpah, we made a deal. Now you come to me from Olam HaEmes and you want the schar? We made a deal. But I'm not so sure I did the right thing. Rav Unger said, this is not a shaila for me. This is a shaila for a Hasidic Rebbe. Go to the Machanovka Rebbe and ask him. So the Yid went to the Machanovka Rebbe. He asked the Rebbe, what should I do? The Rebbe said, Al Pi Yashrus, give the schar to the Yid. And I said, Yashrus? Yashrus is we made a deal. He gets to eat it, I get the schar. He said, listen, the Yid was killed the next morning. He doesn't have children, you have children. Yashrus is giving the schar. I said, okay, if the Rebbe says I'll give him the schar. The Rebbe said, no, that's not how you're doing it. He pulled out a set of keys. He said, there's a shul down the block that's always empty. Go to that shul at midnight, open the Yoren HaKodesh. Tell HaKodesh Baruch Hu you want to give him the schar. So the Yid says, I did it. I went to the Beis Medrash. I spoke out the whole story to HaKodesh Baruch Hu. I told the Rabbi Shalom, believe Sholem, he can have the schar, give him the schar, covered God. The next morning I went back to the Machanovka Rebbe. I said, Rebbe, I did what you said. The Rebbe said to me, now listen to me, what I want to tell you. That Yid was a tzaddik. His whole life was Torah. His whole life was chesed. His whole life was tefillah. He was killed, Al Kiddush Hashem. He went straight to Gan Eden. He's sitting there in the Mizrach Vant of Gan Eden and Segeit him on. He wants the schar for one more mitzvah. Can you foretell what the value of a mitzvah is? And you're still alive. You can chaperine every day and do mitzvahs. There's tefillin, there's tzitzis, there's tefillah, there's Torah, there's chesed, there's mitzvahs every day. You're still alive. Chaperine. Rabbi say, we have to chaperine. You have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Mitzvah of tzedakah, a mitzvah of chesed, but a mitzvah that will have dividends of Torah, of Talmidim, of people who will take whatever you give to build the future of this Mokum Torah, and it'll last for doirei doiros. Chaperine. There's one more story I want to share with you. There was a shul in Lodz. The shul in Lodz had 400 balabatim that davened there. They were all killed in the Holocaust except for one that survived. So they asked him, Rabbi Yid, what did you do? Why do you think you're the only survivor? He said, I don't know the cheshbonis of the Rabbeinu Shalom, but I'll tell you what I think. Once on Shabbos Parshas Kisavai, nobody wanted to go up for the Teichach. And the Sefer Torah was standing there and nobody came up to take the bracha because nobody wanted the Teichach. I saw the Sefer Torah sitting there b'bezoyin and I said, I don't want the Teichach either, but I don't want the Sefer Torah to be left b'bezoyin. So I went up and took the Aliyah. And I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you took care of me, I'm going to take care of you. We have an opportunity here to take care of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To be those mammals that take care of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants taken care of. To make sure that every single Jewish child has what he needs. A learning center, a therapy center, a playground, and for Shteitzach, the Rebbeim and the teachers and the classrooms. And the Torah that's taught, and the Chumash, and the Rashi, and the Gemara, and the Rashi, and the Tosfos, and everything that goes with it, and the Tefillah, and the Ashkafa. Every Talmud will get that. But Rabbi say, Chaperine, it's an opportunity that will last forever. It's an investment in your future. And when you say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I may have my challenges, but I care more about your challenges, Rabbi Shalom. Rabbi Shalom will embrace you, take you into his arms, and say, Mama, I love you. I'm going to take care of you forever and ever. Shkoyach.
Thank you, Rabbi Feldheim, for those incredibly inspirational words. We all know there's an incredible mitzvah of giving tzedakah. We also know we have a haftacha, we have a promise from the Rabbi Shalom. Aser to aser, asher b'sfiltis asher. Yes, we are called on today more so than ever before to give countless numbers of other organizations and other mostos all around the world. But at the same time, here we have a wonderful opportunity to help, whether you're in the capacity of a parent, a grandparent, or just a regular individual in this community and elsewhere. Please think about it and at the same time act. The theme is one of a place for every child. It's going to be a 36-hour capital campaign, Mitzvah Hashem, on December 27th, 28th. Let me now call on Simcha Rosenblum to provide a lot of the details regarding the specific campaign. And Amir Hashem, it should be tremendously, tremendously successful. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Simcha Rosenblum, and I'm a campaign manager with the Chesed Fund. I've been working on campaigns like this for the last 3 to 4 years, working with Kirov organizations, Chesed organizations, schools, shuls, yeshivas. Really, I've seen it all, every type of organization. And what I do is I come in and I work with the leadership, whether it's the administrative team, the fundraisers, the lay leadership, the board on any organization, and I help that organization figure out what are their resources, how much money can they raise, and what is the strategy to actually raise those funds. So, as a member of the Chesed Fund, I'll come in and we'll see, okay, how much money have you raised in the past? How much, investment of time can you put into it? And what is it that you really need to get out of it? So here, we're talking about, it's a little more personal for me. My wife was a teacher for TI, Mindy Rosenblum. She was in the gold class last year. We have a lot of her course at for TI, and we're really, really excited to be able to give back ourselves, to be able to work on this campaign. So the question is, how are we going to go do it? How are we going to raise this money? And it really comes down to everybody, right? The source of a crowdfunding campaign is the crowd, is getting as many people as possible involved in the campaign. If you have 10 people who can volunteer, great. What can 10 people do? What can 100 people do? What can 1,000 people do? So we're talking about a school, over 400 families involved in the school. We're talking about dozens of rabbanim, of teachers who all see the value of what the school does and who have connection to the students or families in the school or alumni of the school, and have a lot of courses over to the school and see what is the future that we can build together. So it's about getting everybody engaged. I'm sure everyone here is used to being hit up maybe once a week, once a month. Someone asks you, I'm raising money for this. But the reality is we're always the askee. How often are we the asker? How often are we the ones going around and asking people to give? And that's what this is about. It's not about just cutting a check or how much more am I going to pay over my tuition. It's about investing of yourself and about believing in it and thereby going and spreading it out to the world. I tell people, think first and foremost, right? Who are you going to ask, right? You're going to ask your friends, your co-workers, your family members, people who you interact with on a day-to-day basis, people who are connected to you, right? I tell people, think about it this way. Let's say, you learn an awesome piece of Torah, or you go to an amazing restaurant. what do you want to do? What's the first thing you do? You see somebody, you just ate the best steak you've ever had in your life. You're going to go tell them, you got to check out this restaurant. This was unbelievable. We went for anniversary. It was amazing. You should totally go, right? Or I just learned this amazing piece of information. I have to share it with you. I'm so blown away. That's what this campaign is. This campaign is your opportunity to go tell your friends. It is a platform for you to tell your friends, your family, your connections, how amazing TI is. Why do you send to TI? Why do you teach at TI? Why is this important to you? And tell them that this is an opportunity to partner. People love to partner with things. People love to be on a winning team. We're not talking about a campaign, thank God, but Baruch Hashem, we're not talking about a campaign where we're saying, oh, where COVID has affected us and we're going to have to close down and we can't. Wait, no, that's not what we're doing. For organizations like that, that's death. Here we are on a winning team. We are a school that is bursting at the seams and a school that has amazing, amazing opportunities to help their students in ways that we have not been able to in the past, that we have a need that comes from being such a big, thriving school. And we have the opportunity to dedicate these new opportunities, to be a partner in all of these new opportunities. And when we're making phone calls and we're telling people about the campaign, that's what we're doing. We're telling them, please help us invest in our future, that we can be even better than we already are. Be on our team, join our team, help us. So what we're asking people to do is to take on their own personal fundraising pages and asking people to go through. We have a list here. If you haven't gotten a packet, we have a packet here, which everyone will be emailed. I posted a link in the chat. So in the chat, you can create your page using that link. But we have here information about the campaign, information to help you so that you can, express all the information to your friends and family in an easy, simple way. We have information on different incentives and prizes and, different ways to make it fun and engaging. And we have here also at the end a list. So what do I tell people do? I tell people, think if you're gonna, let's say you're making a wedding, you're making a bar mitzvah, you're having some sort of simcha, right? So you want to have a list, your invitation list. You probably, if you've been involved, in something, in the last, you got married or your kid's old enough that you made a bar mitzvah, look at those lists, pull those out, and those are the people that you're going to call. Because if you're close enough to somebody to invite them to a simcha or to tell them about your simcha, to say, hey, we get a mazel tov, you're close enough to ask them for $100, $36, $54, $1,000, depending on what their needs are. You have that ability. I'm saying I've worked on, at this point, dozens and dozens of these campaigns with the Chesed Fund, and we see that it's possible. People who don't think that they can do it, people who don't think, I don't know anybody rich. You don't need to know anybody rich. You just need to know people. And if you know 50 people or 100 people, you can get those people. If you want to set your goal at, $1,800, let's say, everyone can do a lot more than that. But everyone knows 100 people that'll give you $18, and some of those people will give you a lot more than $18. So what we tell people to do is make your simcha list, make your invitation list. That's number one. Who are all the people? Then once you have that, go through it and write down based upon, what person's able to do, what you think that there are financially. Make a guess about how much money you think you could ask them for, or what you think they would give you if you would ask them. There are people that'll give you $500 just because you asked, but you've never asked before. So think about what people might be able to do, and that kind of gives you a path. You'll see, you know what? I think I'm capable of raising $10,000. I never would have thought about it before, but now you know what? I go through each one. I just can't believe it. And I've seen yeshiva bachurim, unmarried yeshiva bachurim, calling their friends and family and raising $10,000 or more. So everyone, any married family should be able to certainly be able to do that. And we're here as a resource to help you. We'll give you scripts, we'll give you WhatsApp messages, things that you can post around. Phone calls are obviously the best because someone, when you make a phone call, it's much harder for somebody to say no. But that's really the ideal. But if you sometimes you want to follow up, sometimes you want to send a phone call, and then you follow up with a WhatsApp message. You send a WhatsApp message to prime them, and then you call them the next day if
Give me a paper. I'll write it down. I need a paper. The girls in the class.